there will be accidents if the speed is not slowed down. Residents find it also difficult to enter their driveways or the street they live in, like Wilson Street, Murdoch, or Wheatstone Road, with other road users tailgating them. Moving on to Okitu, where I live. Most of us residents are using the beach on a daily basis. We go for a surf, go for a dip with the kids, walk the dogs. Lots of us, especially our older residents, love to sit on the seats in the dunes. For all those activities, we have to cross the state highway, and doing so puts us in danger every time because cars and trucks are moving fast, and it is not that easy to estimate the correct speed they are traveling at. Especially kids have trouble with this. An area especially dangerous is the section of the highway around the Okitu store. Kids go buy their ice cream and then cross the road to get to the playground on the other side of the highway. Often there are cars and trucks parked, sometimes in 2 rows, and the kids have to navigate their way through this, stepping out into the traffic behind a parked car or truck. It is frightening to see that traffic doesn't slow down when it is chaotic like that. Just a few meters down is the school bus stop, another area of concern, as our older children, and some of them are only 10, 11 years old, they have to cross the highway to get to the school bus. Just remember, trucks and cars going by at 70 or faster. My kids are 6 and 8 years old, and they're aching to bike to school with me. They ask me every day, but I'm not going to do it because I'm scared. And that is such a shame. Our kids should be able to bike to school safely. Another reason for the speed change has a lot to do with health. The traffic is quite loud, and especially heavy vehicles. When trucks are going past during the night, it often wakes the residents living along the highway and impacts on their quality of sleep. This is accompanied by houses shaking night and day. I do wonder sometimes what it does to the structure of our houses and what it does to the dunes out front. If the speed is slowed down, the noise level will go down too, and I think that would be wonderful. Moving on to Makarori. We all know what happened there over the last few months. People have lost their lives, families have lost their loved ones. When we hear the sirens coming, our hearts sink. Please not again. The headland is especially dangerous with cars and trucks driving at high speed and cutting corners. Pulling into some of the beach access pathways is a challenge for surfers and beachgoers. Further down the road is the northern end. Lots of families live there, and many more bring their children there because it is a kid-friendly beach. But it is very difficult to pull out into the highway safely at the current speed limit. When we drive over the hill down to Tatapori, I want to drive slower than the current speed limit in order to feel safe. But it is near impossible with cars or trucks tailgating me. I'm certain that visitors to the region that are camping there don't feel safe either when they enter the highway. I hope you understand why we are concerned and worried. More and more families with young children move into the area, and we want these children, our children, to be safe. Our loved ones, neighbors, friends, people from town and from up the coast, and international visitors. We don't want to lose one of them. We have seen too many deaths, too many accidents and close calls. The traffic will only increase over the next years. But if we slow down the traffic, we give everybody more time to react to a dangerous situation. Stopping distances will be shorter and impact forces will be reduced. To make our community a safer place for our children, for our people, we need your support. Please help. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Questions?
Thank you so much for coming in. It is an issue we are constantly hearing now, and so if we are going to act, how quickly would you like us to act on this?
Today, if we can. It is incredibly dangerous, and of course, 100 times we cross the highway and nothing happens, but we don't know when it will happen. And I don't want to know that I could have done something and I didn't. And so, as soon as possible.
Thank you. I'll ask Manager Tara Coates to comment on that submission.
Kia ora, Veronica. So we've met on site, and we've talked about the process in terms of the business case, and Ben's given you some timeframes as well, I believe. So we've got that. Oh, and
Thank you, Veronica. It's really important that we hear the voice of the community and are able to understand what the impact is for you. So it is really great for you to come along. I really appreciate it, and certainly understand your desire to have a safe system and a safe community. I will be talking about this later in the presentation, but in case you're not able to stay, it is having a safe network and taking a safe system approach is absolutely core to what we do, and we are moving to do speed management reviews right across the country. And we have heard and are very aware that these sections of State Highway 35 are of great concern to the community. So we are looking at that. We do have some steps to go through before we can come back and give you formal feedback on that. But the issues you've raised, the vulnerable road users and the importance to the community really help us to make that case as well internally. And when we look at the safe system, we're looking at the roads and roadsides, we're looking at speed, we're looking at vehicles, and we're looking at driver behaviour. So we're looking at trying to create a system where all of those components are consistently improving. And we know that speed, when people make mistakes, and people do make mistakes, we've all seen it, we know when there's a terrible outcome as you've had here. But the speed is a real factor in time, reaction time, people's ability to recover, along with all those other things that we can do on roads and roadsides to give people space to recover, as well as time and what a lower speed limit allows. So there's great evidence around that, in your submission and the work that you've been doing in the local community will be a part of our decision making for that. So I can't give you an answer today, but it is something that we have taken back and we are working through internally. Thank you.
Just one question. Do you have an idea about the time frames? Are we talking about weeks or months?
I can't give you a cast iron response, but certainly I would expect that we'll be able to give you some more information within the next month or so.
Thank you.
At least you have been listened to by the right people. Time frames are difficult. Thank you very much for your submission.
I'll just table this article from the Gisborne Herald for you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for your time today. I'm Paul Williams, this is my wife Sarah Williams, and I guess we're here in support of what Veronica has already said. This has come about quite quickly for us because we sort of talked to Pat and things have happened quite rapidly, which is good for us. But we've been living at Turihau for 120 years now, Our family, same family, I'm the fifth generation, we've got sixth generation on the way through. We have concerns similar to what Veronica has suggested about safety on the roads, speed limit, pedestrian safety, all these sorts of things. And we obviously want to support what they're trying to do through Wainui and Okatu as well, and Makarori. Also at Turihau Bay, we have, I guess if we just carry on from what Veronica was saying, we have a lot of freedom camping and things like that, which we are really happy to have in our bay, and we don't have any niggles with that. We love people utilising the beautiful piece of beach we have. There's obviously concerns around safety at that certain times of the year, even in that 70k zone. Like there's no way I would camp on the beach that close to the road these days when the volume of traffic is so huge. You know, obviously over time, since we've been there, industry has changed. Different areas have grown. Farming sector's probably shrunken up the coast, and the forestry sector has grown rapidly. And we don't think that the management and long-term foresight for that, the wall of wood, has been managed correctly. And the road is just, if you've been up there, is unsafe, and particularly in certain areas. There's a lot of patch-up jobs on the road, a lot of potholes. It really can be quite dangerous, big potholes. And the problem is they're patching it but not rebuilding the roads. And this is a constant thing right in front of our house. It's every single year we get a strip pulled out and re-put down. And I could have taken a photo 3 weeks ago when they finished a piece and the pothole was coming straight through the new turf, the new bitumen. So, you know, that's a real concern for us going forward when there's more logging trucks on the roads. It's not just logging trucks, but a lot of other traffic. And what's the long-term plan for that? Because it's not just forestry guys on the road, there's a lot of other communities up the coast as well. And you know, we're trying to grow the coast, we're trying to make it more attractive, we're trying to get people out into the provinces, but it's certainly a bit of a deterrent. I guess the other concern for us is the noise pollution that is created from the industry, not directly at forestry, but primarily. Most of our houses are located along the beachfront, pretty much all of them, and most people will have their houses along the roadside because that's where they were primarily built when the farming when the farming sector got going. So the road noise we're getting now is almost unbearable. We have staff moving out of houses now due to the air braking, the rattling of the trucks. And it's not just the noise, it's the time of the day. We're having trucks going all night now. We have to close our windows at night and we're quite far off the road. You know, we have kids that can't sleep in their houses. They have to sleep on the floor at the far room of the house away from the road as far as they can possibly get. And it's constant. You get trains of trucks coming through, and these trucks are going up empty, rattling, and coming back fully loaded in the middle of the night. And I think that affects everything in our area. It affects the environment. It affects our way of life. It affects our sleeping patterns, which is really important for our children and for our families. And it's important for the tourism industry, which everybody's talking about growing. So I guess what we would like to see is a bit more of a long-term plan in the building of the roads and where that money is going to be spent. I know that the government handed out some money towards the East Coast region to redo these roads, and we want a big long-term foresight because that article in the paper suggested the other day the wall of wood's getting bigger over time and it's going to plateau for another 50 years. So it's not we don't want a short-term fix. And we're certainly not going anywhere. So, yeah, and I guess what we would like to propose is potentially some speed limit restrictions, maybe at certain times of the year. Definitely some noise restrictions at certain hours of the night. Like we're not asking for much, but we're just asking for some sleep, which I don't think should be too much of an ask. And I guess no engine braking and things like that may help the scenario. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people up the coast having the same problems. But whether the speed limit may help as well, I'm not sure.
We just, you know, with the 100k limit, we're sure they're speeding a lot faster than that at night. So it would be quite good for the police maybe to do some monitoring speeds at night. And we thought about hiring a noise meter to check what the noise is at the boundary from those trucks hooning past at night. And is that about? Yeah. No, that's about it, really.
Thank you for your submission. Hand it back to the two experts that followed on last time. Firstly, we had Parafi Roads over there. So listening carefully, and Emma.
I'll just talk from an operational point. In terms of the work program, for the bridge itself, there's going to be some, it's going to be resurfaced this financial year in March. It should be this month, if not early April, that's worst case. The 700 metres past the bridge, that's programmed for major resurfacing next year, 1920, and 680 metres towards the bridge or south of that bridge is going to be, that's 2021 when it's programmed. So there's some major investment there. A little bit further on, and you'll probably see it as well, the at Puawa, where with, you know, that area there. So that's programmed for next year as a major rehab or major road reconstruction. So they're doing the designs now, and the reason for that, we know that freedom camping is going to be there. So last thing we want is our machinery to be working that and putting the dust and impacts on those freedom campers. So there's a lot of investment coming on. And no, I certainly won't disagree with in terms of the comments in terms of some of the pothole repairs in the state. It's just we're trying to keep some of that network open. It's a hard job for our contracts to do until the proper fix comes, and it's coming within the next 18 months. Okay, that's all I can hear.
Before I ask Emma to respond, does the city and our zone make any difference to you?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. It's a big difference in speed. And like you were saying earlier, that affects everything, reaction time, everything, and does affect the noise. You know, that's the engine braking's a horrendous sound, and if you 30 k's lower, you shouldn't necessarily need to be using them all the time. I know they're a safety tool, like I've got a truck of my own and I have engine braking in my truck, but when it's coming through your windows all night, it's sort of unacceptable. The 70k zone would make a massive difference, I think, and it would make a massive difference to the quality of the road. It's the weight of those trucks and the speed they're coming into those corners that just chewing it up. It's really obvious for us to see when we're driving on our. Well, we're just we're on there every day, and you know we can see what's happening.
Thank you so much for your submission and coming in today. I appreciate it. And we are, as council, receiving a number of opportunities to discuss this big issue. Is it reasonable? My question isn't actually to you, I guess it's to the officers to get the police to do some monitoring around speed, because I live on State Highway 35 on Awapuni Road, and there are nights when I sense a truck is moving not at 100k, but certainly at a faster speed than that. So have we asked, I mean, I appreciate Sam's not here today, so it's hard to ask him, but Emma, can we get some kind of feedback as to that? Because that is a concern with the accidents and all those other frameworks, but I hear it too.
Yeah, so there's several different components to that. So thank you for coming along and letting us know what's happening for you. The noise is an issue we've looked at quite extensively around the country. And we know, obviously, that there is a connection between noise and speed. And one of the things, particularly with engine braking, we can't stop engine braking because it is, as you know, a safety thing. But we do find what's most successful is working with the industry, working with the companies, and working with the drivers to really, they know, and I know the forestry industry, and I've been doing some work on this with Te Ure Rako, the ministry, in terms of social licence to operate is really important, and things like using engine braking where it's not necessary at night where there's residents is a big issue for any company. And so we find that's probably our most effective route, is to work with the companies and the drivers, because they can actually create the right incentives for people to change that behaviour. It's very difficult to enforce, and so that's one of the things that we try to do, and I'm very happy to raise that with RTF and with the forestry industry, and particularly in this region. So that's one of the things that we would certainly look at. And obviously in terms of speed, we are looking at that, and we are looking at that section of State Highway 35. So hopefully we'll be able to come back to you with some more concrete answers on some of that. And Dave's obviously talked about the road and the management of it. And one of the challenges we have all around the country is that we do have limited funding. So sometimes we have to balance up the point at which we're able to do those deep remediation works and essentially rebuild the road from the base layers up, versus the need to do maintenance that will maintain the road as a corridor, but is not able to get down to that real base level to rebuild. And that's always a management challenge. We have it all around the country. But as you can hear, that those sections are scheduled for that deep remediation, which is positive. Probably not soon enough for you, but I think that's where those trade-offs are always having to be made across the system.
Is there a process to get even courtesy engine braking sign, just to maybe like a soft approach with the truck drivers? You know, we've got residents in the area down with those sort of signs that's reflective at night.
We can look at signage. Evidence is that it's quite ineffective.
Probably get blind to it after a while.
Yeah, and actually working with the drivers is more effective. Those signs tend to make people feel better that there is a visible sign, but where we've monitored it, it doesn't lead to a significant change in behaviour.
If we were to find evidence that some of the noise levels were being breached, then what sort of, we've read the district plan, and there's definitely some levels there that,
and that's more
must be
a council thing, because we don't have the noise monitoring on existing roads.
That was going to be my question. It could be answered while our submitters are here. Is there, and I think there is, but is there a lower level of sound that is allowed in midnight areas? Like it's been suggested potentially between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. would be a period where we ought to look to having reduced level of noise for the benefit of the people that live in these vicinities. And just today we've got the State Highway 35, but the same issues apply in the Waimata Valley, and we've had residents from there raise exactly the same issues, but that's a council road, and therefore it's not something that the state's involved with. So do we have anyone that can tell me whether there's a different level of noise level tolerable between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m.?
No, we don't have anybody here who is the expert in the provisions within the rule, but within the plan. But I expect that there would be a rule that you could measure against. But also, there's a monitoring and effectiveness approach that we could probably look at monitoring of that rule once. Unfortunately, we don't have Nick here as well to give us that expert advice. But I can definitely take that on board and look into that for you.
And supplementary, just one question, would it be possible for NZTA to initiate some traffic counts, and can you determine between small vehicles and heavy vehicles, because there's trucks and trailers doing metalling as well as log trucks. So in the work that you propose to do an analysis of, is traffic count something you might undertake, please?
Can I ask Oliver to answer that, please?
They're already done. We've got traffic counts for the last 20 years or so, so you can delineate between light vehicles and heavy vehicles.
So could we have that reported and the graph showing the change?
It's on our website. It's all open to the public. So
on NZTA's website?
Yep. It's all day. Yep. We can certainly pull that information out. It's not.
do something about it, of course, but it's only signage.
That's right.
Because it's a safety issue. It's a safety mechanism for the vehicles, so we can't prohibit it.
Because those trucks are non-stop, and it's not just the logging trucks either. You know, many trucks be tracking very early in the morning as well as the logging. No more questions, sorry.
Well, and again, thank you, Paul. Say that right? Yeah, Paul, right? Yes. Sorry, Paul has already noted during the season when we had the 70K, it had a better impact. So how did we got to a point where we could do that because of the camping numbers were up, but is that a mechanism we can use in the now? Because we're hearing that made a difference. We're hearing safety as a key concern in regards to the braking. So if they're going slower, then they're not going to have to use their brakes as much. But is there a special dispensation or space that we go into to get it to be a 70K zone for a longer period, if not for always, in that space? Because legitimately, Emma, we are hearing more and more about the concerns of safety. We have had the tragic loss of life, and also, you know, the impact of trucking is going to grow. It's not going away unless we can have them in the road somewhere else. So, is that something we can legitimately do in the now, in a space of saying, let's just make that part and portion a 70K zone all the time? Just
as I said before, we are looking at a speed management review nationwide, and we have also identified the section of State Highway 35 as needing a particular focus. So as soon as we have something on that, we'll come back. It will be consulted with the community once we have a decision on the timing, and so people will have a chance to input and engage in that. And when we have a high level of support in the community, we have the evidence, we've got the crash rates and the vehicle numbers and all of that information. As Ollie was saying, we have that, and so we just need to wait now until we have a decision on proceeding with it.
Your issues answered, but at least you can now put them on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Kia ora tātou. So the report from us for this committee meeting is really a roundup of the work that's been going on both nationally and in Tairāwhiti. So the summary there on the first page really captures it all. So the network operating framework, I know there's been quite a lot of interest in that piece of work. So it is finally happening. Cardno have now been engaged, and they're currently looking, as just a bit of an update from the report, they're currently looking at the data that we hold and NZTA hold and looking for any gaps that are really tangible and need to be filled before they can run the model that spits out the results that we need to develop the network operating framework, and looking at consultation with the community towards the middle of this year. Moving on, there's an attachment at Appendix 1, which is a report from Maven Consulting on the roading maintenance cost and equitable funding review. So this is a piece of work that's going to inform the revenue and financing policy review that's currently underway. So that staff are currently scoping up what that piece of work looks like. So that report from Maven doesn't sort of give us the answer as to how we should fund the costs associated with maintaining our roads, and whether or not urban ratepayers are unduly subsidising the impacts from the rural forestry trucks. So it raises a few more questions and more detail we need to dig down into to answer that question. There's also another appendix, Appendix 2. That's the workshop report. You may remember at the Regional Transport Committee, Ably Transport Consultancy ran a workshop with the committee looking at the issues facing transport in the region, and there's a summary report that's been prepared following the workshop. Kaiti School Bus Initiative, just an update on that. So this is the initiative that facilitates the transport of secondary school students from Kaiti to the schools that are all located on the other side of the city. And we have funding in the LTP of $40,000 per annum, so that's continuing, and we just need to update the Memorandum of Understanding to keep that live. And then last but not least, there are a number of changes happening at a national level that will influence our next regional land transport plan. And we're currently doing the very early stages of scoping out a project plan for that process. So we'll come back to you with more detail once we've looked at that. And then, oh, sorry, there is one more item. Also, the Special Interest Group for Transport, which is regional transport planners from unitary authorities and regional councils, are also looking at ways that that regional land transport planning process can be improved, and working very closely with NZTA as well to try and make that process as simple as it possibly can be, and to get the most value for all partners. And any questions?
Sorry, I wasn't sure whether we could interrupt you. Your summary speak. So here I go. First question with Cardno.
Yes.
You know, I was intrigued to read further down. That's 2017. Oh, was it further up? Down. Yeah. So with Cardno in the space now, there's been a notion that at 2017 they were engaged. So we're re-engaging. So has there just been some waiting for the Provincial Growth Fund to come to play to actually action there?
Yeah, we had to wait to find the funding to do the next phase of the work. So there's a series of stages that have to be worked through. And in 2017, we worked through 1 and 2, and then 3, and now we're doing the last bits to finish off the process.
So the funds are there?
The funds are there.
Thank you. In regards to the Maven Consulting report, there was quite a considerable amount of discussion around that, the language of the urban-rural costings, and I'm just cognizant that we're wanting to look at the network as one network, and when we send a message of around urban-rural spaces, it can send a message that there's still this disconnected when I think I mean, again, I'm living urbanly, but I know I rely on my rural sector. So how do we work that so that the message is around a one network when I looked at the numbers of the residential payments, I was going through it today, looking at them again. And so urban residents, you know, who would legitimately say, we don't use those rural roads. I never go out there, I don't. So how are we to, you know, to bring forward a one network thinking when we still have that targeted speak in that sense? I was interested in that.
A good question. I guess the real question we've got to answer is that there will be an increase in maintenance costs associated with our roads, and how we fund that in the long term. Yeah. So really it is looking at across the whole network and the benefits that accrue from the trucks and the cars that use the roading network. You know, they accrue across the region. So it does have to be a regional approach. Yeah, and that's partly what the NOF will look at as well.
Thank you. And just lastly, on the Kaiti School Bus Initiative, it notes that the annual cost to council was 40K. Where does that fund come from? What bucket of money? Because again, it's a great initiative. It's having a positive impact. And again, we always find initiatives and the initial impacts and the goodness of them, how are they long-term sustained? And particularly with that, because as we've heard, we've got whānau who are not keen to bike to school just yet. Hopefully in the next interim, we will see cyclists on our roads, getting young people from that side of town to that, because all our schools are over here, high schools. So just, yeah, I just wanted to, in the long term, think of that space. How long is that fund legitimately there for?
So through the chair, the school bus initiative was included in the LTP. So it's in the next 3 years funding. We've put that money aside for that school bus initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 20, under spatial plan, Pika.2, consultation fatigue and lack of stakeholder participation limits stakeholder feedback. Maybe I'm suffering from fatigue too, but can somebody expand on that and tell me exactly what you're trying to say?
Yeah, so we're saying that there's a risk because there are multiple things that both us and other agencies are talking to the public about and talking to organisations about and iwi about, that they'll just have enough and not want to engage anymore, feel that they've already had their say, and why do they need to engage again on yet another process? And yeah.
So they're saying in short, action.
Yes, and talk to us once and then do what we want. Don't keep coming back again and again.
And make sure we're listening.
Yes.
That was included in the in our asset management plan, which we went for the NLTP funding, but we're also including some of those into the PGF applications, and also we've got some business cases over the next 6 months that we've got to try and complete that will get us to the first stage. Did it? So that was. Yeah, so that workload was included in our activity management plan. That we, okay, and so there was a backload, and so some of that we've been able to start in this National Land Transport Program in the next 3 years, and some of it we've included into our PGF applications as well. So there's still some business cases that have to be done to unlock that money, and that's what Susan and the team are working on. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, a supplementary question, but I do see a lot of concerns about the potential that one can take over this paper of creating an urban versus rural, and it's mentioned on
Through the chair, probably just a comment in terms of that report, because it's quite critical in terms of your decision making going forward into the whole review, as you pointed out, Councillor Seymour, and something that we will be putting to all of council for further discussion.
So through the chair, it will follow the spending that we have to date. The primary spend will be on the rural network as we go forward. So we'll follow those same trends. We wouldn't see a marked shift back the other way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the report too, I was just, there's a statement in it, the beneficiaries of this growth will be the port, transport and machinery services, and it will potentially help with further development of the wood processing sector through creating and exporting manufactured wood products. There's a discussion around we could have 4 sawmills. We've just had into this committee space residents who are ratepayers, citizens of this region, in the space of discussing benefits. And I'm just really aware that this committee it's a big industry that we're beholden to in the now that is creating quite a lot of concerns. And so when I see that notion of its beneficiaries, sorry, it's page 7 of 14, but there's different numbers, 27 or 58. So, yeah, so I'm just really, you know, we're getting in our ears as councillors a number of concerned residents that are starting to not see so much of the benefits. Be it that this industry is one of the hugest impactors in our economy, and we again appreciate all that it does bring. But it doesn't appear that we have had enough kind of discussions around the impacts, the foresight forward. And again, it's not a blame framework, but it's just simply that beneficiaries of this industry are looking to be a minority. When the impacts is huge across the region. And so considerations to further 4 sawmills, I thought, well, that's going to create jobs, obviously, and all of that, but is that someone looking into doing that? Is that actually on the current plans if we're going to look at this industry's impacts into our region? When I read that, it just concerns me about who are the beneficiaries of this industry when we are hearing more and more our ratepayer concerns and the impacts of our roads that can't cope and the current loading of trucks, knowing it's coming on with a lot more to come in the future. So how do we in this committee here today, you know, what do we do with that when we are tasked to consider the Maven report, take on board its information, but in the now we're dealing with some significant concerns right now, where young lives are at risk, and yet safety is a highly paramounted spoke from our NZTA peeps. But this wood industry sees itself as being the economic powerhouse of our industry. So I'm just, how do I allay to my citizens, we got this in hand?
Through the chair, can I re-emphasise that this is a review to give you some compelling information to make an informed, well-considered decisions. So while we could correct a lot of the terminology, which we will do in future, in terms of reference to parts of our communities, it is a review to inform good decision making. Can I direct you as well to the opportunity of the spatial plan as well? So our earlier submitter asked about what is the long-term plan. That is a 30-year regional conversation around what are we going to do. Information like this will inform that.
So, and I'll just add on to that, just in terms, so the other piece of work that will add to this is, so the NOF has been discussed before, that will give further evidence to the applicability of a bylaw in particular places that will address some of the concerns, not all of the concerns, but some of the concerns. So it's a part of a piece of work that is going to be delivered over this year.
Appreciate that, and certainly we've been given some great reports giving us detailed information. Is this information available to the general public or those interested in this space? Is it on the NZ, on all websites? I've had that question posed to me. Can this report will be available, ain't it? So, yeah.
The Chair, I understand it is available now publicly.
Oh, thank you. So we should read these reports next to each other, obviously, as they are. What would be our kind of then moving forward? We've got the spatial planning, as we say, we've got lots more discussions in that sense. I guess for most people, it's the timing of all things, because we are always beholden to funding to that work being done. So, yeah, are we still just sitting in a wait space of once we can absolutely know how much funds we've got to spend, then the next phase will happen? It's in the spatial space.
I don't believe work is stopping for the current work program. So we're not in a hold and wait space. So there is a approved RLTP that we're doing our work to progress. This is a wider, longer conversation to address some of these issues long term for our future needs.
Having heard all that, I just need to remind myself too, this is a strategic planning committee. Yeah, so, you know, getting into detail, okay.
Through the chair, thank you. It's interesting some of the comments being made, because I wrote down here on the economic benefits. Forestry may be large contributors to our local economy. However, they're the largest contributors to our destruction of our roads as well. And also they're disruptive to our private lives, which all in all, when we're hearing how people are losing sleep, then they go to work themselves the next day, they could be putting themselves in jeopardy again because of the lack of sleep. And I just think we seriously have to look at how are we going to better this. And I know it's not a short-term fix. It'll take some time, but we need to seriously be looking at the safety side of this whole thing.
It would be wrong of me if I didn't ask this last question, because again, we are looking at the bigger picture for our region. So I just wouldn't want to miss out that rail is still in the mix, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
We up and running? Thanks, Heather. Just as we get the visuals up there, I'd just like to introduce to everyone Oliver Postings. Oliver is now the System Manager for the Tairāwhiti region as well as the Hawke's Bay region. And he's taken up from Wayne, who was our previous System Manager. And Oliver's spending quite a bit of time up here in the region working with the Tairāwhiti Roads team to make sure that all of the issues obviously raised here, but also important to community, he's well across and can feed back into our national system. Regional Transport Committee update. I turned it on. Oh. Oh, is that a PDF? Yeah, it's what was sent to us. Oh, no.
You've got it turned on.
So how do I move through a PDF? Okay, thank you. Okay. The new road safety strategy. So again, this I touched on briefly earlier. So we are in the process of developing a discussion document working in partnership with Ministry of Transport for a new 10-year road safety strategy. And it's going to be released for public consultation in April and provide the opportunity to feed back into that. We have an existing Safer Journey strategy which ends in 2020. And part of what the government's wanting to engage with the public about is whether we should adopt a Vision Zero approach to road safety. Vision Zero has been used in a number of other countries, and it does create, it's very aspirational obviously, but it does create quite a different environment for making prioritisation decisions about where and how we invest across the network. So we are really wanting to make sure you're aware of this and that you're able to participate in it as a regional council, but there'll also be opportunities for the community to engage with that as well. On the next slide, we've got our Safe Networks program, and this is an initiative that is targeting the reduction of 160 deaths and serious injuries every year. And it is a real priority for this government. It's also a high priority for our board. And so there's an initial investment of 1.5 billion in that. And we're starting with Auckland, Waikato and Canterbury. But as I'll mention shortly, we also have a Safe Roads Boost program happening in the Gisborne region. So I'll come back to that one. And we have information about the Safe Network program available on our website. And so we can provide you with some further information on that. The next slide covers the Extended Safety Boost program. Now this program is the one where we have Gisborne targeted alongside Hawke's Bay, Manawatu, Whanganui and the West Coast. So this is a package on the next slide, please, Yvette, of treatments that start with things like the paint on the road. Then we look at widening road shoulders, putting in rumble strips along the side and centre of the road, improving signage, then installing some safety barriers on the sides of the road to protect people in the event of the runoff crashes. And then in some areas we look at medians barriers as well. What we find is that the combination of these actually makes quite significant impacts on safety, and it's part of that safe system approach that I mentioned earlier, where we assume that people will make mistakes and that some of these initiatives can make a significant difference. And we've already got a number of examples of situations where people have been able to avoid either runoff crashes or in some cases head-on crashes because of some of these initiatives. And it enables us to work right across the country much faster than we would with some of our other programs, because what we do is we look at creating processes where we're installing a known system. We have a much more streamlined approach to the design and approval for that. We're also seeing where some of these have already been installed in Otago, really significant decreases in crashes. So they are working as they're designed to work. So you'll be seeing that happening, and there'll be community engagement and public information on that in this region. A somewhat more technical update. The Asset Management Data Standard is also another program we're looking at to improve data and analytics right across the country for use in understanding what's happening with our system nationwide, and then being able to share that information and use it to help make better decisions. So this has come out of a nationwide infrastructure work program that's led by the Treasury, but it's been done in partnership with the Road Efficiency Group. That's a partnership between us and Land Transport. And it's certainly something that we want all of our partners working in asset management to be aware of and participating in as we move ahead. On the next slide, over the last couple of months, we've been focusing on motorcycle safety. We tend to focus on this every year as we get towards in summer and then heading into winter, because we know that motorbike riders are a more vulnerable group of users, and that everything we can do to help them be visible and to continually improve their driving practices is really important. We have a series of resources that we've used in partnership with ACC. The Ride Forever coaching is something that is available online that people can access at any time, and we really encourage people to know about that and to use it to keep being a safe rider and look after themselves and their passengers where they carry a passenger. Another area that we're looking at nationwide is travel demand management on the next slide. So this is something which has a very significant impact on areas where we have congestion. So it's something we're using quite a bit in our big cities, is looking at how we provide different options for either local or regional journeys where we see congestion and unpredictable journeys and so on. And that includes a whole mix of things, from making information available. So over summer, we had a whole series of things where we provided information on our website about where congestion was likely, what times of day, so that people could access that information and make choices about driving at different times. I certainly used it to get out of Wellington one day, and I was rather shocked to find myself and my family in Whakakuni at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we couldn't get into our accommodation because we just had a great run through by leaving before the projected peak, and by the time we were there, the projected peak had hit and people were in slow traffic. So there's tools like that. There's other apps and things that we're looking at, like in Queenstown and Auckland, we've looked at tools where people can do ride sharing through using an app and things like that. And then public transport's obviously a key one in any region where it can help people to make regular, reliable journeys without having to use a private vehicle. And finally, active modes like walking and cycling. And obviously we've done quite a bit on that cycling network here. Moving into the more regional updates. Provincial Growth Fund, obviously of great interest to everyone. So the state highways projects, so we're working right across the region with Tairāwhiti Roads, with GDC and with our own team. So on the state highways, we've got both the 2-year and the 5-year package. And so this looks at State Highway 2 from Napier to Opotiki, and also State Highway 35. So we've got work underway on each of those projects on HMPV, or HPMV, I always get those letters around the wrong way. We're looking at all of the remaining bridges that need upgrading and identifying what work needs done there. State Highway 35 resilience, we're working with the council to engage with iwi on things that we can do. So there's a new approaches to, for example, plantings and so on to improve the stability of the land around the roading corridor. Makakumaka realignment, so again working doing quite a lot of design work there to take those single lane bridges out and working with the local hapu to ensure we've got that support there. In the 5-year package, we've got Waikari Gorge down towards Napier, and again, taking the indicative business case through to move to the information that we need. So all of the investigations that set in place the scope of that project, what's in and what's out, the preliminary works on what the geotechnical analysis tells us about building in that area, and then that starts us in our design process and all the steps we need to get an approval that tells us we're making a good value for money investment that will deliver what our customers need. State Highway 35 and 2 passing opportunities. So again, a lot of work's been going on that project, identifying a wide range of potential locations. We're being a little bit careful about how much we talk about each of those, because we know from experience on these corridors that we can identify potential locations, but the geotechnical and land acquisition and other factors can dramatically shift what's possible and what's not. So we don't want to go out and say we can definitely do X number. We want to make sure we've got a good base of information before we start to engage publicly on those, but we know they're really important, and it's going to be quite an important piece of work that we roll out in a really managed way. Moving to local roads, there are a number of pieces of work here proceeding, and these are again a mix of 2 and 5 year projects. So looking at Kings Harper Road, a number of resilience projects, route security on East Cape, so some sealing there, and Teneroto Road as the alternative route south of State Highway 2. The emergency works that's been contracted, and there's work already underway on that. So that's mainly funded through the NLTF with the PGF picking up the local component, and another contract for the Mangaparo Bridge also underway there. Yeah. So we're just working out, and one of the things that we know is really important for this is to get some really good reporting so that people can actually see real time where each project's at. So we're very conscious of that. So we've been through a process, obviously with the council, of working through, so there's 2 separate contracts involved. So we have one contract for the state highway projects that are being delivered, and then a separate contract with GDC for the local road projects. And so that's taken some time, and obviously we need to have certainty of the funding, although pretty good certainty because the Crown's already said they're going to do it, but to work through that. Then what we have is we had the ITPP, which set out the full set of that prioritised, identifying right through the whole network where all the priority issues, concerns and opportunities for improvements were. And that essentially provides us with our indicative business case that enables us to get moving. Then we go through probably a more tailored approach depending on the projects. So for large projects like something like the Waikari Gorge, we need to do a lot of investigations and work to actually get to a point where we could go to design and then contract. And so that work's underway. So we're doing the investigations. I won't have the detail on everything. So for example, on Kings Harper, what we'll be moving to on that will be a single stage business case. So that takes us through all the initial priority works that are needed to get to a point of letting a contract. And that's a 5 year, that's part of the 5 year package. So I don't know the exact timing on when we get to the point of letting a contract, but that will be done within the 5-year package. And that timing will be dependent because there's such a volume of activity in this network. We're having to work really hard and really carefully to make sure we're getting the right capability and plant available. And we're also doing what the PGF expects of us in terms of bringing on and employing local people as part of the projects. So these are all specific projects that are progressing, going through the necessary processes to get us to a point where we can get contracts and get things underway. I don't know whether Dave's got some more specific start dates on anything at this stage, but that's certainly the type of reporting we're wanting to move to, is to have it really visible for you what stage things are at, how long the next stage is anticipated to take, when we're going to have those key milestones of construction starting and finishing, which is what people most want to know.
All right. Can I just ask then, supplementary, Mr. Chairman, for some similar comment with respect to route security on the East Cape Road, because that's something that this council's been asking about for about the same length of time. Is it in the 5-year basket as well?
There's one component of work which is a ceiling component, which is in the short-term work, and then there's
it's only about 2 k's though, isn't it?
Yes, it's a very geotechnically challenging piece of road in terms of what the long-term solution is. There's a separate piece of work to actually identify what is going to be the best value for money solution.
And so it would be about 5 years for the whole package.
So I don't have the exact timing on that because I don't have that work program, but the initial ceiling's in the 2-year, and then the next bit is a business case. It's not actually getting in there and moving the road or whatever it is that the business case tells us is going to be the right solution.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt in midstream, but we might go off that slide. Okay,
the next one is the local roads that are, sorry, back one, that are 100% PGF funded. And again, there's quite a series here of activity across the network and actually really building that backlog that Dave was talking about earlier. So a very significant program of works that again is rolling out as quickly as the teams are available to do the work. And alongside that, we've got, we'll have the safety works as well happening. So we're just working how we try as much as possible to link those things together and manage the disruption to the customers on the roads as we build and improve them. And the next slide, other construction updates. So we've completed the State Highway 35 rest area upgrades in February. So that was a series that was funded under the last Regional Economic Development funding. Gladstone Bridge, as you will probably be much more familiar with as you see it every day, is looking at completion date this month, as is Wainui Cycleway. Awapuni Road reconstruction is end of May, just looking at getting the right plant in place to do that work, and LED streetlight updates across both networks. So there's...
Could I just ask one question about a matter on there, which is the Wainui Cycleway, which looks, the concrete part looks great. Thank you very much. Do you come into a arrangement with Gisborne District Council about the maintenance of the grass verge on either side of that? When you can, you know, NZTA funds the cycleway, but what happens about the ongoing keeping it nice and looking good for tourists or our own local people who choose to ride their bikes, because it's getting to be quite untidy? So what's the arrangement?
What roadside maintenance?
Roadside maintenance. For that cycleway, what happens, the Transportation Funds gives some money to Liverpool communities because they've got better equipment to do the maintenance on those areas. So that's.
So you're going to send them out there?
Andrew's team we'll get Andrew's team to look at it.
Sorry, just going back to the local roads. I know we've discussed priority roading, projects in local roads. And when I see the list or the noteds that are there, the priority, and even in a localized space, is that based on, again, high use? Yeah, I mean, again, I look at the roads that have been aerodrome, Rakaia Tāne, and sorry, yeah, so I'm just thinking from a local perspective of those living in the urban space who have been, what's been pushed out, but those roads would be seen as priority because of what they're used for, and mostly that would be heavy truck use, I guess, is what it is. So is that currently the space of prioritisation is on the high use of trucks and local roads as well?
So there's what we have to remember is there's kind of two different systems operating here. We have our normal National Land Transport funded program of maintenance and ongoing activity on the network, and then we have separate funding from the Provincial Growth Fund. So where we have the Provincial Growth Fund, that was prioritised by the ITPP work, which came to this committee for inclusion in the RLTP. So that's the Provincial Growth Fund activities are from the activities that were prioritised in that. So yes, there's probably because it was focused on economic development, growth and sustainability in terms of resilience and being able to use the roads, that's primarily going to be where you're seeing that activity, which will be heavy vehicles in large part.
And that's urban, urban speak of who's paying for what, when technically those would also say, I don't drive in those, those roads as well. So what messages, are we legitimately saying to our region when we know we do need more money in this space to help offset all the costs that incur with road works? So I'm just, really always aware that when we're messaging to the community, legitimately, it's a big question of who's paying for it and how can we pay for it, where can we get more money for it, and that will always come up about those are roads that aren't used by a lot of people, and so when they're prioritised, that's where people will ask, or should those users of it also pay for it? And
so that's the difference with a Provincial Growth Fund. Yeah. It is about economic growth, sustainability and development in the regions. And so it is a different criteria to the National Land Transport Fund.
Which I guess a lot of people don't know. So
yeah. So one of our challenges, and I know that certainly Minister Jones is very keen that we're really clear about who's funding which project. So we will be making sure that we're very clear about that as we go through. Okay, so if we're back to maintenance updates, please. So we've got our summer season of resealing underway, and so the reseals on 2 and 35 are looking to be completed this month, and our rehab program's also been programmed in, and there's a couple of key areas that I know various people have been interested to know that they're on the plan for action. And on the local network, the heavy metalling program is scheduled into June, with rehab completed by mid-April and bridge maintenance going to contract in March. So as you know, there's been a big investment in the region, and the NLTF funding's also increased. So you will be seeing quite a lot of activity, and I know Bill was commenting that he's seeing a lot on the network as well. One of the things that I would just note in that is that we are very conscious about the safety of our workers on those sites. The terrible incident that we had in the Bay of Plenty recently with 3 workers killed was just another reminder of just how important our safe working environments are. And, we're working really hard to try and make sure we've got really good safety around each of those sites. We really want our people driving through to drive slowly and with care. Recently, this week actually, we closed the Remataka Hill Road for 5 consecutive nights to do our upgrades and maintenance there because it's just too dangerous to do that while the road's kept open. So we are looking at everything we can do to ensure that we keep our people safe who are working on the network, as well as the people who are driving through those work sites. So anything you can do to encourage the community to really take care and make sure every worker gets home safely at the end of the day would be great. And our Safe Roads Boost program, which I have already mentioned. So we've got improvements there, Gisborne to Wairoa, Matawai to Gisborne and Tolaga Bay to Gisborne, and that's that set of treatments that I mentioned earlier. And we're looking at completion of those works in the middle of the year, but we've got that team working with Tairāwhiti Roads to try and align those pieces of work so that we manage the impact across the network. And just finally, one further opportunity to keep our young people safe is a local targeted education program around really encouraging our drivers to slow down around schools and keep our little ones safe and be aware that they can be a bit more unpredictable. And it's only going to take a couple of minutes out of people's days in terms of their driving day, but it's much better than the sort of damage that can happen to a small person and when they come in contact with a large vehicle. So really encourage you to again get out there, and I know you're great advocates for safety around our schools, so great little resource there to use.
Thank you for a very comprehensive report. I'll defer to Malcolm at this stage, but I've got a couple of curly questions too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, a question for you, Emma. You talk about the state highways. Are you resealing that in chip or in bitumen?
Can I have a technical expert, please?
It's chip, except Arapuni Road, where the residents are, that's going to be in asphalt.
So you say from here to Matawai it'll be a chip seal? God help us. Put on the glass, people, eh? Why do we have to go? It's probably a saving in money, but a saving in money at the end of it is probably the dearest way of doing it because it doesn't last as long as the bitumen, does it? So the cheap's not always the best. You don't have to answer it.
Emma, given the amount of money that we've spent on the Gisborne to Tiger Bay Highway over the last 5 to 7 years, and I've chipped Dave about this, and we intend to spend a lot more. Given that it was less than a fortnight ago, we had a meeting whereby we discussed the upgrade of the Hokoroa Road, which is all downhill into the Waimata Road, which in turn comes out down through the back of Gisborne. You're talking Tuckers Road, etc. Would it not be more strategic to send all the logging traffic and the metal traffic from Tauwhipara and the back of Toko down State Highway 35 and into Gisborne, thus avoiding coming through the city and direct to the wharf? Now, probably one or both Daves over there are having a bit of a grin about this, but I'm just asking a question because when I heard it, I thought, no, I'm not going to stir the pot now. I'll wait till you are here and we'll ask that same question. But look at Dave, he's grinning, so he wants to answer it.
Well, I would say that the network operating framework is actually the really critical thing here, and that's what we've been talking with the council about, is ensuring that we have a collective plan about where heavy vehicles can go, and then we can actually look at making sure that the supporting decisions then enable that to drive our investment to the right place. But the first thing we need to do is actually have that local decision about what we want our network to do and where we want those vehicles to be in the network. And we've had this conversation a number of times, and the port's raised it with us as well. And what we've said to them is, once we have that framework and the plan in place, then we can direct our investment to support it.
well done, Dave. Supplementary to that, Forestry have offered their equipment and to upgrade the Hookerall Road, which is a shocker. In the winter, it's like a mudslide. But anyway, that's another issue. I just wanted to know, when you put your strategic plan together, you experts, how do you work out in terms of Hookerall, Waimata, Tuckers Road and into town vis-a-vis sending them down Highway 35, which has had a poultice of money spent on it? How do you justify that? Was it you got inside information we don't have?
Always. So through the chair, the NOF will work out the pros and cons for whatever heavy vehicle route we choose. There's arguments, and we've had long discussions with different forestry owners and contractors about which different routes that they would choose to use that benefit them. And it's weighing that up against not just the economic impact, but also the environmental, the social outcomes that come with that as well. So one of the things that the NOF does is it takes a high level approach, because if we move the traffic onto one road and one road in particular, whichever road that might be, there's winners and losers. The winners are the people that don't have those trucks. The losers are the ones that do have all of those trucks. So part of the NOF is how we balance those vehicles, and not just heavy vehicles, but all modes of transport across our transport network that we have. And that's where that NOF process will balance off all of those four well-beings that we're responsible for as council to make sure we get the right route.
And supplementary to that, Emma, in terms of they're both there, so they can answer the question if you can't. In terms of the prioritising of how the workload is shared out on Highway 35, who is the responsible body that says they go over there and do this job? Who actually prioritises the work? The contractors, Tairāwhiti Roads, or David there in council? Or do you people make that decision?
And generally, we have a network operating contract with our contractors, and that gives, it creates an environment where we generally will ask them to do most of the balancing out of where investment happens and in what order. But we're a partner to that contract, so we obviously can have an input and engage with them on those. So there is probably a bit of both. Oliver, would you add?
I'd say that's pretty full on. Yeah.
So am I supposed to be satisfied with that? Because I want to know, and I've asked the question repeatedly, and the CEO must be sick of me saying that the service from the council, the Northern East Coast, is appalling. I'm saying exactly the same thing applies with State Highway 35. Right at present, there's a huge amount of work going on, and that's good. But I'm talking about the northern region, north of Ticketing, which seems to have a paucity of maintenance and attention given to it. And those ones up there, not only do they give me a hard time, I bet they give David a hard time when he goes home. So all I want is a simple answer. How does this come about?
And obviously, if you've got a concern about what's happening in parts of the network, then you can raise it with any one of us. I'll put Dave in the hot seat, but you can raise it with any of us, and then we can engage in a process of working with the contractor and understanding what's been scheduled and why. And because, you know, it is a big network, it does have a lot of challenges, and we can't do everything as quickly as everyone wants all of the time. So we do make, you know, we or the contractor is going to have to make prioritisation decisions. But if you've got genuine concerns about an area or a part of the network that you feel is not getting the attention it deserves, if you put the question to us, we can find out whether it's scheduled, whether it's been deprioritised for some reason, and we can share that information with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth.
Sorry, first I just want to thank you for the Maven and the spatial planning reports, and indeed the information at a highly strategic level. I guess it's always difficult to acknowledge that we have got people working at a very high level of thinking about this region's considerable needs in the network space. But today, and again, we have had over the last month or so, if not previous months, residents coming to share their high-end concerns, which are in the now, as far as safety, crossing roads that are significant high-use, heavy vehicle spaces. Is it a preferred of this, and I guess my question is to you, Katie, I think at this point, maybe Emma would come in too, but that we have people saying a bypass, heavy bypass need right here, right now. And there are a couple of groups working in this space. We know we've got the Cardno report and a whole bunch of work that's funded through the PGF. Is it preferred that we just go with that, or these other collective groups who are working on this space too? Is it better to have a couple of different groups with their sphere of interest and influence, or we just prefer to say Cardno all the way and let's wait till that happens? Because as I said, we've had people mention a heavy bypass, a structural need, have written up plans and kind of come together. So as a council, we're waiting on the Cardno, but others who are coming into this space with some ideas, we can add them too. But how are we working together in the space of a heavy bypass discussion when we've got collectors out there?
Through the chair, I will hand to, after a few comments. So the NOF has been committed to by this committee and the adoption of the RLTP. That set our plan for the next couple of years. If you want a wider view, bypasses don't turn up next year. So a 30-year view, the opportunity really is the spatial plan to have a longer term conversation about that. And there are a number of stakeholders that we've targeted engagement with them to understand their aspirations too. And obviously we'll be bringing that back to council to make a spatial planning decision on where that type of infrastructure should go if it's a preferred outcome.
If I can add to that, the spatial planning tool is a really critical one, and we see that as an absolutely vital input to making good long-term asset investment decisions. So we absolutely support that, and I think under this government that's only going to get more prominence in the planning and process of looking ahead. There is very limited funding for major investment in the state highway network. Current funding in state highway activity classes between 1.2 and 1.5 billion per annum. In 10 years' time, that'll be 350 to 500 million per annum for the whole country. So when you look at that, and yesterday I had the Mayor of Horowhenua asking for a bypass around Levin, where we have 17,000 vehicles a day. And we're unable to commit to a time frame for that, even though that project's been approved. We're still looking at how and when we can schedule that. And that's been 8 years of work to plan for and bring that project to the table. And now we have to wait until there's funding available. So it is important to be realistic and understand the funding constraints we operate within for these types of activities. Because I don't want you to sit there and think, well, if we ask for it, it's going to happen. And I can understand exactly why you want to look at it, but that's why the NOF work, the NOT work and the spatial plan are all things that enable you to make the right decisions for now and also to plan for the future when there may be more funding available sometime in the future. So I really encourage you to back those processes because it will make you ready for whatever happens in the future.
Thank you. Through the chair, I also just wanted to add, because it was a question about various people working in this space, and I just want to reinforce to council is, you are the roading controlling authority, and that is your core role alongside that of, delivering your district or your unitary plans and your spatial plans. So it is council's role to be doing this work, and if there are other people that are involved in and wanting to support, then let's collaborate with them around a stakeholder engagement, but it is very much your role to be doing this stuff.
And my final comment, one of the key issues you raise when we speak often, Emma, and again, I acknowledge it is in a political framework you sit within. So I guess, you know, the election's a little way off in the now, but that is something that makes it difficult in this space. And that's probably, when I read some of these reports, the uncertainties often are because of the space we sit in the 3-year collectively, who's going to put the money up. And so from your NZTA space, when we talk about these projects, these priorities, every region is crying out and saying, we want this now. Does that roll over in the sense that it could easily just be scrapped and started again with the next whoever comes in? So is it, I mean, I know that people, this is a tough discussion because of the political framework, but it's our reality. So, you know, for the NZTA, they've just gone through some structural rechanging in that space. What certainties do we have, or are there? And so we can say in the next 3 years, these will just continue over and that will happen. Do you know that certainty yourself?
So we're a Crown entity. So our statutory function is to give effect to government policy. That government policy is set in the government policy statement. That's required to be released by government at a minimum of every 3 years. And then they can update it and change it. Government policy statement sets out the government's priorities and its funding aligned to those priorities. So if you look at the current one, it sets out their priorities and it's got a nice big table. I think it's about pages, I think 18 and 19 or something like that. No, 36 and 37. It's got a table of all those funding ranges. And so we work to that. Now then the other part of the system, which is the part that this committee is involved in, is setting the regional land transport priorities through the RLTP process and putting those on the table. And then our job, the job of our board, is to take all of those RLTPs every 3 years and look across them all and say, what is the National Land Transport Program? And once that happens, on the day that that happens, that is correct as per that day. Now, from that point on, things will move and change because sometimes a project doesn't proceed for some reason or another, or it one might cost less and so something else can come on, or a community might say, actually, we've got another priority and we want to take something off the table. So things then evolve and change. But that program is the program until an agreed change process happens. And then once we get into the detail of that, as things go through the approvals process, as they get down to contracting, they become certain when they're contracted. That's just the normal business that we operate in and the way we work. So there is a great deal of certainty for the vast majority of work in that, because once you're in that pipeline and you know that what's happening, things do change and governments do change, and then we have to flex and respond to that. And that's when you'll see potentially programs of work that have been a priority under one government but are not yet contracted may then be less of a priority. It doesn't mean they disappear. It doesn't mean the work is gone. It simply means that they're no longer a priority, and so something else is going to be in front of that. And that's our operating environment.
I guess what I was, and again, thank you for that summary in that space, because that's, again, one of the touted speaks in our constant now is this government are really into this government, and, you know, and that's all good and well, but in the longitudinal thinking for the last 30 years spatial planning, what does that mean, you know? And so for a lot of our citizens, you know, who aren't in these spaces unpacking this, it's really important for them to understand that we sit within a legislation that could just, as you say, change after some consult and speak. But if we're planning 30, 50 years ahead, how does that work within the framework we've got before us? So
one really good example is because we'd worked with this region with the council to do the ITPP. When there was an opportunity to look at funding for regional economic development, we had a plan. We were able to make a case for that funding by working together and building off the work that had already been done. So that to me is a really good example of where that strategic work to identify the needs of the region and have a plan positions you well for the future, because we can't predict exactly what will happen in the future, but opportunities will arise, and if you're well prepared for them, you can take advantage of them.
I just wanted to ask, and I mean, I know it's an issue for ourselves on our local roads, but it seems like NZTA has a very substantial part to play in where things happen. And you will be really well aware that we had a substantial rainfall event on the 4th of June last year.
Mm-hmm.
The Wigan Bridge on Tautari Parai Road is a very significant piece of infrastructure to the pastoral farmers, to our own Tautari Parai farms, and to a substantial amount of forestry. That bridge has got some issues around its stability, and it has got a speed limit on it, and it's in my ward, and so I observe it from time to time. I'd be really interested to know when we can expect to see some serious work done on that bridge so that the current 30km/h speed limit, the sign for which is lying in the ditch, half covered in silt, so it's clearly been there since the last time it rained, are we going to see some work? And it frustrates me as a councillor that some of the work since 4th June last year is just taking so long to happen. We're going to be through our construction season, we're still going to be waiting, and so our residents will go into winter with the substandard conditions that they've put up with all summer, which is not so bad in summer, you can put up with them. But if it becomes wet, we have water running off water tables and more erosion occurs on the sides of roads. So what contribution is NZTA going to make to assist GDC to get this work done?
Well, I mean, we've already, we're funding at 92%, I think, of the cost of those works, and then the PGF is providing the other component of it. So we have worked really carefully to identify and assess what work's required and to make sure that we're really supporting that financially. In terms of the actual scheduling of that particular project, Dave, it's a 3-year program to fix that, and that's, I know it's challenging for the community to have to live with that. That's not unusual with major events. Certainly, and I've got others in other parts of my area where we've had between 3 and 5 years to do some of the remediation, simply because of the challenges on some sites and availability of the resources and people and equipment to do the work. So some of these big events do take quite a long time to get the full recovery from them. But Dave, do you have anything on Wigan?
Yes, and that specific bridge, the contract documents will be ready by the end of this month. And so we've got two suppliers that will go direct appointment. One's Taylor's, one's Siteworks, to get the pricing. That's the timing for the reasons. Even our professionals, consultants are stretched to do the work. There's a lot of work on it.
Thank you very much. That's March. And then how long will it take to determine the satisfactory contract? A month? Could be April, so we could be into May or June before any, and there's piles of metals stockpiled all around the site. I understand, and we've had it reported to us, that it takes 3 years or we should expect it to take 3 years, but there are some bridges that are a great higher priority than others, and hopefully this one is on that list. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Nothing further, I think we're doing a
I'll take the report as read, but there will be a decision paper going to the assets for more the details of if there's going to be some slight changes to the proposal. So this is just more information for the committee. And other regional councils, public transport resides with them. Okay.
Yep. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Motion carried. Now we come to thank you everyone for your participation. It's been interesting.